In December 2016, a CIA officer stationed in Havana, Cuba, woke up in the middle of the night to a sound that would change her life forever. It was a piercing, grinding noise, almost mechanical, coming from one specific direction in her bedroom. When she moved her head just a few inches, the sound stopped completely. Move back, there it was again. Intense, directional, impossible. Within hours, she couldn't think straight. Within days, she couldn't work. Within weeks, her life as she knew it was over. And she wasn't alone. What happened in Havana between 2016 and 2017 remains one of the most disturbing, unexplained phenomena of the 21st century. And here's what makes it terrifying. It's still happening. The first documented case occurred in late 2016 at the US Embassy in Havana. CIA officers and State Department employees began reporting nearly identical experiences. They'd hear sudden localized sounds, sometimes described as grinding metal, sometimes as a high-pitched ringing or intense pressure. But here's the disturbing part. The sounds were directional. Move your head a few inches, silence. Move it back. The sound returned, perfectly localized to that exact spot. Then came the symptoms. Victims reported immediate cognitive impairment. We're talking about trained intelligence officers who, at the peak of their mental capabilities, suddenly unable to recall simple words or complete basic tasks. They experienced vertigo, nausea, severe headaches, and hearing loss. Some had visual disturbances. Others developed sensitivity to sound and light that made normal life impossible. By August 2017, the US had documented at least 21 cases among embassy personnel. The State Department evacuated non-essential staff and their families. Cuba became the center of an international incident that nobody could explain. Medical examinations revealed something unprecedented. Brain injuries consistent with concussions, but without any physical trauma. MRI scans showed actual changes in brain structure. White matter differences. Disruptions in the connectivity between different brain regions. These weren't psychosomatic symptoms or mass hysteria. This was measurable, physical brain damage. But from what? Here's where this goes from disturbing to absolutely chilling. In May 2018, a US diplomat in Guangzhou, China reported identical symptoms. That same year, another case appeared in Uzbekistan. The phenomenon wasn't limited to Cuba anymore. Between 2019 and 2021, cases exploded worldwide. US officials reported incidents in Russia, Poland, Georgia, in Taiwan, Australia, Colombia, Kyrgyzstan, and Austria. We're talking about a global pattern. And it wasn't just happening at embassies anymore. In 2019, a White House official reported symptoms while walking near the ellipse, just steps from the White House lawn. In 2021, CIA officers reported incidents near the Watergate complex in Washington, D.C. These weren't isolated facilities in foreign countries. This was happening on American soil, in the heart of the nation's capital. By 2021, the CIA had set up a task force specifically to investigate what they were now calling anomalous health incidents. Over 1,000 cases had been reported by US government personnel and their families. 1,000 cases of unexplained brain injuries affecting intelligence officers, diplomats, military personnel, and their children. Think about that for a moment. This phenomenon, whatever it is, has affected more than 1,000 American officials across dozens of countries over nearly a decade. And we still don't have a definitive explanation. And so what actually happened to these people? The leading theory, and the most unsettling one, is that victims were targeted by some form of directed energy weapon. Specifically, pulsed radio frequency energy or focused microwaves. In 2020, a report by the National Academy of Sciences concluded that directed pulsed radio frequency energy was the most plausible mechanism. for the injuries observed in Havana. The report noted that this type of energy could cause the exact symptoms reported: the localized sound perception, the immediate onset, and the specific pattern of brain injuries. Here's what makes this theory so disturbing. This technology exists. It's been studied since the Cold War. In the 1960s and 70s, Soviet researchers demonstrated that pulsed microwaves could create the perception of sound directly in the human head through something called the Frey effect. You're not hearing sound through your ears. The microwave pulses are literally creating pressure waves in the tissue of your brain, and you perceive that as sound. But that raises a terrifying question. Who would do this, and why? Some have pointed fingers at Russia, citing Cold War-era research into microwave weapons and the hostile relationship between Russian intelligence and US diplomatic personnel. Others have suggested Cuba, though Cuba's government has vehemently denied involvement and even invited FBI investigators to examine evidence. A 2023 intelligence assessment concluded that it was very unlikely a foreign adversary was responsible for the majority of cases. But very unlikely isn't impossible. And it doesn't explain what did cause these injuries. Here's where things get even more complicated and, honestly, more frightening. Not everyone agrees on what happened. Some scientists have suggested that the sounds could have been caused by crickets. Specifically, the Indies short-tailed cricket, which produces a sound remarkably similar to the audio recordings from Havana. But that doesn't explain the brain injuries. It doesn't explain the directional nature of the phenomenon. And it certainly doesn't explain cases where no sound was reported at all. Others have proposed mass psychogenic illness, essentially a kind of collective hysteria, but medical evidence contradicts this. You can't imagine your way into measurable brain damage. You can't psychosomatically create white matter changes visible on an MRI. In March 2024, a joint investigation by The Insider, Der Spiegel, and 60 Minutes reported evidence suggesting that a Russian intelligence unit specializing in directed energy weapons may have been tracking or targeting some of the victims. They identified members of Unit 29155, a secretive division of Russian military intelligence, with expertise in radio frequency weapons who were in the vicinity of several incidents. But even this doesn't answer all the questions. If it was an attack, what was the objective? Why target some personnel and not others? Why children? Why locations that would almost certainly trigger an international incident? And perhaps most disturbingly, why hasn't it stopped? As of 2024, new cases are still being reported. The phenomenon continues. For the victims, life has fundamentally changed. Many can no longer work in their chosen fields. Some struggle with permanent cognitive impairment, chronic pain, and debilitating sensitivity to environmental stimuli. Marriages have fallen apart under the strain. Careers built over decades have ended abruptly. The US government has responded with increased medical support and compensation for affected personnel. But questions remain about what protections exist for diplomatic and intelligence officers moving forward. How do you protect against an invisible, unexplained phenomenon that can strike anywhere at any time? In 2023, Congress passed legislation providing financial support for victims, acknowledging the reality of their injuries, even as the cause remains officially unexplained. But for many affected individuals, this feels like too little, too late. So what really happened in Havana? What's still happening around the world? Is it a sophisticated weapon deployed by a foreign adversary? Is it some form of surveillance technology with unintended health effects? Is it something we haven't even considered yet? The truth is, we don't know. And that might be the most unsettling part of all. More than 1,000 people have been affected by something that leaves measurable damage but no clear explanation. Something that can strike anywhere. From a protected embassy in Havana to an apartment building in Washington, D.C. Something that targets specific individuals with surgical precision, leaving others nearby completely unaffected. Whatever happened in Havana in 2016 opened a door we haven't been able to close. And somewhere out there, someone knows exactly what's behind it. The question is, will we ever find out?